My brother married a widow to save his estate, and I am still not certain which of them got the better bargain. My name is Frederick Ashwick. I am 30 years old, the younger brother of the Duke of Ashwick, and I have spent most of my adult life watching my brother do things that are correct, efficient, and entirely without warmth. He manages the estate the way a clockmaker manages a clock. Every part in its place, every movement calibrated, every outcome predicted and controlled. He is not cold. He is not cruel. He is a man who decided, very early in life, that the world was a mechanism, and that the way to survive in it was to understand the mechanism and operate it without sentiment. The entail required him to marry before his 35th birthday, or the estate would pass to our cousin Lionel, who was, and I say this with the measured restraint my brother would appreciate, a dissolute, gambling, tenant-evicting disaster of a human being, who would have sold the furniture, dismissed the staff, raised every rent, and reduced 600 years of Ashwick stewardship to rubble within a decade. My brother was 34. He had 11 months. He had been aware of the entail since he was 18, and had done nothing about it, because my brother believed he had time, and because my brother did not know how to choose a wife the way he chose an investment, by calculating the return. He tried. In the spring, he attended the season in London, and met every eligible woman his solicitor and our aunt could produce. He met them with the same mechanical efficiency he brought to everything, and he rejected them all, because the Duke of Ashwick could spot a performance at 50 paces, and every woman he met was performing. The laughter, the interest, the carefully arranged opinions, and he could not bring himself to build a marriage on a performance, even to save his estate. He came home in June, defeated and furious, the only time I have seen my brother display an emotion that was not entirely under his control. And he said, "I cannot find a woman who is not pretending to be someone she is not. Perhaps you should look for someone who has no reason to pretend." What do you mean? I mean that every woman in London is performing because the stakes are a duke. Find someone for whom the stakes are not a duke. Find someone who wants something other than a title. He found Joan Birch. Joan was 27 years old, a carpenter's widow, and she lived in the village of Ashwick with her son Jack, who was 4. Her husband, Thomas Birch, had been a good carpenter and a kind man, and had died of a fever 2 years before, leaving Joan with a child, a cottage, and £40 in savings that would last perhaps another year. She took in washing. She mended clothes. She kept a vegetable garden that was the tidiest thing in the village. She managed her poverty, the way my brother managed his estate, systematically, without self-pity, with a focus on efficiency that left no room for despair. My brother went to see her on a Thursday. He sat in her kitchen, a small, clean room with herbs drying above the fireplace, and a 4-year-old boy drawing pictures on a slate at the table, and he explained the situation with the directness that characterized all his dealings. "Mrs. Birch, I require a wife. The entail on my estate requires me to marry before my 35th birthday, which is in 11 months. I am offering a business arrangement, marriage, a settlement of £300 per annum for you and your son, a place in the household, and, when the entail is satisfied, the freedom to live as you wish within the terms of the marriage. I am not offering affection. I am offering security." Joan looked at him. She was a plain woman, not ugly, not striking, but plain in the way that women who work hard and sleep little and eat last become plain, the beauty worn down to something more durable than beauty. She had brown hair, capable hands, tired eyes, and a composure that came not from breeding, but from having survived things that would have broken a less stubborn person. "And the heir," she said. "If a child comes, it comes. I will not make it a condition. But it would help. It would satisfy the entail permanently, yes. And if I say no, then I will find someone else, and you will continue washing clothes, and within a year, your savings will be gone, and you and Jack will be in the parish workhouse. I am not threatening you, Mrs. Birch. I am describing reality. You are describing my reality, Your Grace. Yours involves losing an estate to a man who will destroy it. We are both desperate. The difference is that you can afford to be desperate elegantly." My brother looked at her. This tired, plain-spoken, capable woman sitting in her kitchen with her arms folded, and her 4-year-old drawing on a slate, and her poverty arranged around her with a dignity that made his London drawing room seem vulgar, and I saw something shift in his expression that I had never seen before. Not warmth, not yet, but recognition. The recognition of a man who has met someone who understands mechanisms as well as he does, and who refuses to pretend that the mechanism is anything other than what it is. "Will you consider it?" he said. "I have been considering it since you sat down. The answer is yes, but I have conditions." "Name them." "Jack attends the estate school. Jack is treated as a member of the household, not as an appendage. I manage my own affairs, my own money, my own time, my own decisions about Jack. And you do not pretend that this is something it is not. If it is a business arrangement, we will conduct it as business. If it becomes something else, we will address that when it happens. But I will not perform gratitude, and I will not perform affection, and I will not stand in a grand house pretending to be a duchess when I am a carpenter's widow. Is that clear?" "Perfectly clear." "Good. We understand each other." They married on a Saturday, in the village church, with Jack holding Joan's hand and looking at the Duke with the frank, assessing curiosity of a 4-year-old who has been told that this man is going to be something like a father, and who has not yet decided whether to approve. Joan moved into Ashwick Hall. She moved into it the way she did everything. Practically, without fuss, with a focus on function that ignored everything decorative. She chose the smallest bedroom in the family wing, not the Duchess's suite. She kept her own clothes, her own habits, her own schedule. She rose at 6, as she always had. On the second morning, the housekeeper, Mrs. Phelps, who had served the family for 18 years, came to Joan's room to discuss the household arrangements. And Joan said, "I will not be rearranging the flowers, Mrs. Phelps. I will not be consulting the menus, or selecting linens, or receiving callers. You have managed this house beautifully for 18 years without a duchess, and I see no reason to interfere with competence." Mrs. Phelps, who had been bracing for the upheaval a new mistress always brought, looked at Joan with cautious relief and said, "And the boy, Your Grace?" "Jack eats in the kitchen with me. He is not to be a nuisance. If he is a nuisance, tell him, not me. He responds better to people who are not his mother." Within a week, the kitchen staff adored Jack. He drew pictures for the cook. He helped the boot boy polish shoes, badly, but with such cheerful effort that the boot boy let him continue. He asked the gardener why worms lived in the dirt, and the gardener gave an answer so thorough that Jack followed him around for the rest of the day, asking follow-up questions. Joan did not attend dinners. She did not rearrange anything or consult anyone, or do any of the things a duchess was expected to do, because she was not a duchess. She was a carpenter's widow fulfilling a contract. My brother noticed. He noticed the way he noticed everything, by observing, cataloging, and filing the information for future reference. And what he noticed about Joan disturbed him, because she was the first person he had ever met whose efficiency matched his own. And the discovery that someone could be as efficient as the Duke of Ashwick, and also be a widow with tired eyes and a 4-year-old who drew horses on a slate, was not a discovery he had been prepared for. He noticed Jack. This was the part that undid him, and I watched it happen with the fascinated helplessness of a man watching a clock that has begun to run in a way its maker did not intend. Jack was 4 years old, serious, quiet, and possessed of a curiosity about the world that expressed itself in questions, an endless, relentless, exhausting stream of questions about everything he saw, heard, touched, and imagined. Why is the house so big? Why do the horses sleep standing up? Why is the sky that color and not a different one? Why does the fire make that sound? The Duke answered them. He answered them with the same precise, thorough, mechanism-understanding attention he gave to estate reports and legal documents. And Jack listened with the focused seriousness of a child who has found an adult who takes his questions as seriously as he asks them. And within a week, the Duke of Ashwick, who had never held a child, never read to a child, never sat on a floor and drawn a horse on a slate with a child, was sitting on the library floor drawing horses on a slate with Jack. And Joan stood in the doorway watching, and her tired eyes were not tired. I came upon them one afternoon in the study, Jack was sitting in my brother's chair. His feet did not reach the floor, and my brother was kneeling beside him, showing him how the estate map worked. Jack pointed to the river and said, "What happens if the river moves?" "Rivers do move," my brother said. "Slowly, over decades." "Then the map is wrong." "Eventually, yes." "Then why draw it?" My brother considered this with the same gravity he brought to questions from Parliament. "Because a map of what is true right now is better than no map at all. You correct it when it changes." Jack thought about this. Then he said, "Does everything change?" "Everything," my brother said. And I saw him look at Joan's coat hanging by the door, and I understood that he was not only talking about rivers. She found the rotten beam in the East Wing servants' quarters. This was the moment I understood that the business arrangement was going to be something else, because Joan found the beam on a Wednesday morning during a walk through the house. She walked through the house every morning, inspecting it with a carpenter's eye, because her husband had been a carpenter, and she knew wood the way my brother knew ledgers. And she told my brother, and my brother sent for the estate carpenter, and the estate carpenter said it would take a week and cost £20. And Joan said, "Give me a saw and 2 shillings worth of oak, and I will do it in a day." She did it in a day. She sawed out the rotten section, fitted the new timber, and reinforced the joint with a precision that the estate carpenter examined afterward and pronounced the best joinery he had seen in 20 years. My brother watched her work, this woman in his house, his wife, on a ladder with a saw in her hand, doing a job that no Duchess in the history of England had ever done. And the expression on his face was not the expression of a man observing an efficient mechanism. It was the expression of a man who has seen something he did not expect and cannot stop seeing. He began to change. The changes were small, invisible to anyone who did not know him the way I knew him, but they were real. He came to breakfast instead of eating in his study. He walked with Jack in the gardens, answering the endless questions. He asked Joan about the house, not as a duke asking a duchess, but as a man asking a carpenter's widow what she saw that he did not. She told him. She told him about the failing plaster in the music room, the woodworm in the library shelves, the settling foundation beneath the orangery. She told him with the same unsentimental directness she brought to everything, and he listened, and he fixed what she found. And the house, which had been correct and efficient and perfectly maintained, began to become something else. It began to become lived in. He sat with her in the evenings. This was new. My brother had always spent his evenings in the study, alone, with his papers. Now he sat in the drawing room, where Joan mended Jack's clothes and the fire burned, and they talked. Not the careful, structured conversation of a business arrangement. The easy, directionless talk of two people who have discovered that they are interested in each other's opinions about things that have nothing to do with estates or entails. She asked him why the West Field lay fallow when the soil was good, and he explained the rotation, and she said the rotation was wrong, and told him what her father had done with a 1/4-acre garden that outproduced most farms, and my brother, who had never taken agricultural advice from a carpenter's widow, tried it, and it worked, and after that, he asked her opinion on everything. She told him about Thomas, her first husband, and about how he had built their cottage with his own hands, and how the door frame was crooked, because he had cut the lintel too short and had to shim it, and how she had loved the crooked door frame because it was the only imperfect thing Thomas ever made, and perfection is exhausting to live with. "You think I am too perfect," my brother said. "I think you are too careful. They are not the same thing. Thomas was careless and warm. You are careful and cold. I would take careless and warm, but I was not given the choice. You were not given any choice. I offered you a mechanism. You offered me security for my son. That was enough. Is it still enough?" She looked at him, this controlled, efficient, mechanism-building man who sat on floors, drawing horses with her son, and she said, "No. It stopped being enough 3 weeks ago, but I did not think it was my place to say so. It is your place. This is your house. This is your house, Your Grace. This is our house, Joan. It has been our house since Jack drew a horse on the library floor, and you fixed the beam in the servants' quarters, and I discovered that a mechanism is a very lonely thing to live inside." She kissed him. Joan Birch, the carpenter's widow, the washerwoman, the woman who had told him she would not perform affection, kissed the Duke of Ashwick in the drawing room on a Tuesday evening in October. And it was not efficient, and it was not mechanical, and it was not part of any arrangement. It was the first entirely unplanned thing my brother had experienced in his adult life, and he looked, afterward, like a clock that has just discovered it can also be a music box. Jack was born the following autumn, a second Jack, which caused some confusion in the household, until Joan declared that the elder would be Jack, and the younger would be Thomas, after his father and her first husband, and my brother agreed without argument, because by then my brother had learned that arguing with Joan Birch was less productive than arguing with the rotten beam she had replaced, and considerably less pleasant. I asked Joan once, privately, in the kitchen, while she was teaching both Jacks to make bread, whether she had expected any of this. "I expected nothing," she said. "That was the arrangement. Nothing expected, nothing owed, nothing pretended. And then your brother sat on the floor with my son and drew a horse, and I understood that the arrangement was over, because a man who draws horses on a slate with a 4-year-old is not a mechanism. He is a man who has forgotten how to be warm and is remembering." Married to save his estate, the widow expected nothing. The Duke gave her everything, not because the entail required it, not because the mechanism demanded it, but because a carpenter's widow walked into his house with a 4-year-old and a saw and showed him that a home is not a clock, and that the things worth keeping are never the things that run on time.